Hola community, welcome to another very special episode of BlenderToday live. Today we got not only a new, the entire section of Blender updated, but we also have one of the creators here to present it. We have a guest. After so long, we haven't had guests. It's been so lonely here. Not anymore, because now we have all the way from another place here in Amsterdam. We have Sybren Stüvel, Dr. Sybren Stüvel. So, hello, Sybren. Clap, 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 clap.
Hello. Hello. Nice to be back again.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's not your first time here, but it's the first time for a long time. You've been busy. You've been part of the animation module for already quite, I don't know, over a year, I think. Years at least. Yeah. It was involved on the Blender Cloud at the very beginning, many years ago. Then more into the Alembic IO and like all the import export. Now focusing on animation, and now also helping out in the asset browser project. This massive project that I'm so happy to see moving forward, thanks to not being just the one person that takes care of the entire asset browser, but the modules are helping out, right?
Oh yeah, but there's also Julian Eisel doing a lot of work, and he was already on the project before me, so he did a lot of and he is doing a lot of the asset handling and the user interface code. And I've been looking mostly at the pose library as a really concrete, slightly more complicated use case for the asset browser.
So what did you guys come up with?
Well, we came up with, if you were a bit Asian, well, somebody on the chat asked that, am I a bit Asian sometimes?
Aren't we all a bit of Asian, a bit African, a bit everything?
I do know that I have German heritage, Italian heritage, but with all the Asian food that I've made over the years, there must be a little bit of Asian in me.
A little bit of Asian. So you guys wrote actually a blog post on the code blog not a long time ago, right? About the post library.
We did. And it has lots of videos. I will put the link in the chat as well. It has a lot of videos with a familiar voiceover in which we explain how it works. And the basic idea behind the entire asset system in Blender is that, at least for now, assets are data blocks with special meaning. So that means that any data block can be an asset. And in our case, that means that every pose becomes its own action. So every pose you see in the library is an action in Blender and can get a thumbnail attached and some tags and a name and a description and that kind of stuff. And then you can double click on it and your character will take on that pose.
Okay, so how does it differ from the post library add-on that was going around many years ago for the Open Movie project that you also worked on?
Yes, that basically it's the pose thumbnails add-on. Because Blender already had a post library system in there, and that was also based on actions. But there, every library was an action. Instead of every pose being its own action, it had many poses in one action. And underwater, when you go through like 3 different menus and then enable 2 different checkboxes, you would be able to see that it would use pose markers. So it had on the timeline that action would have markers with a name. That name was the name of the pose, and the action would just be evaluated on that particular frame.
Yeah, sounds a bit hacky.
It is. Yeah. And of course, it didn't have any luxurious things like the preview icons. And of course, you want to be able to see. You don't necessarily know what smile 1, smile 2, smile 3 are. So that is when Jasper made his post thumbnails add-on, which at some point I took over to polish a little bit more, and we basically got it to work with Blender. You could make preview icons. You could select them, you could blend them, you could flip poses as well, so that you could have like a right-hand pose applied to the left hand, or even facial poses when they were made towards the camera on the right, you could make them apply them with the camera on the left.
So even though that add-on is no longer relevant, a lot of that research went into what is now the current.
Yeah, totally. Especially the mostly the lessons of not putting the images in separate files. Actually, on Twitter, I did get the question recently, like, how do I manually go in and edit these images, because I want to add like a little bit of an overlay on top of them.
Yeah, or text or anything,
Yeah, but the thing is, when you can just set up your blend file, because those images are rendered from the scene camera, so you can attach whatever, like an image on a plane or something, hover it in front of the camera, and you get your overlays automatically.
Or a text object,
Yeah, and then you don't even need to have this kind of stuff. So, and of course, also the images would get out of sync with the old add-on. They were all 001 to 3.png files. And if you reorder your thumbnail or your poses in the library, you would also have to reorder the thumbnails, otherwise you would get the wrong thing.
Oh, they were by order even, okay.
Yeah,
That's all drawbacks. But now the asset browser, do you have it there? Can we see it in action?
We can see it in action. Let me select my entire screen.
There
we go. And here we have Spring with some facial actions and so poses and some hand poses. So what you see here on the right is the asset browser. It's set to animations, because if you go somewhere else, you'll see other things that I have there. And in animations, you can just double click an icon and it will apply that pose to your character.
Nice, and it actually applies it. So if you have auto key on, it will key it.
If you have auto key on, it will key it. If you have only some bones selected, for example, if I just select the mouth here, then you can see, oh well, that's broken.
Hey, bug hunting.
A bug. This is not the master build. This is my own build in which I try to fix another problem, and apparently I missed something.
Okay, so this is not what people will get from BuildBot. It's more experimental even.
It is, but we can just build a new one. There we go.
Well, that was fast.
Yeah, it's my home gaming machine. It's beefy. There you go. Now you can see that you select the bones, and it will only apply the pose to those selected bones. You can also blend. You can see, just double click to apply the entire
double clicking
pose.
and dragging.
We'll get to that, because this is the asset browser.
Okay.
And the asset browser has other things like box select, and it has all kinds of stuff in here for managing your assets. So we couldn't really do that kind of specific behavior. So for that, I have another view on the assets. So again, we have the asset browser here on the right, but now here in the 3D viewport, we have a panel in the animation tab called Pose Library. And there also we have these icons, and you can single click them. You don't even have to double click them. You can just single click them, it will apply the pose, or you can drag them and then you apply it at a certain percentage. You can see it at the top of the screen, the percentage exactly.
Yeah. And these actions are mirrored exactly what it's shown on the right in the asset browser, but in a nicer...
Yeah, it's just a different view on the same assets. Like I'm searching here for spring. If I remove that, then you can also see the other ones. You see the facial expressions and everything.
And this,
and of course here also the flip pose works, also between hands. So now the other hand is being influenced.
that's so cool.
So that all works pretty well. Another thing that we can do is, but that is available here, is you can go to the context menu and click select pose bones or deselect pose bones, and those are the same buttons here. So if you want to know which bones are used in a certain pose, then you can just select the pose, click on select, and there you can see, well, all these bones are used in this particular pose.
Okay, so to see which ones are keyed only.
Yeah. Now, if you want to edit these poses, of course, they're defined in a different blend file. They're part of the asset library and not part of your animation file. You can do, in the context menu, open blend file.
Ooh.
If you do that, a new Blender will start that opens that particular pose library that contains the pose you wanted. And this works for any asset, by the way, not just the pose library.
Right click, open blend file always works. Not only poses, but in this case.
Exactly. Let me save my preferences so that the interface scale is used there. So let's look at, for example, this pose, open blend file. Now in here, I can click on assign action, and this will take the action that I selected, the Angry 4 one, and actually assign it to the character. You can see here in the action editor that Angry 4 has been assigned, and you can see that it has been keyed on frame number 1.
So Angry 4 already existed as an action and it wasn't assigned to Angry 4 pose, or?
No, it just existed as a pose in the library.
Okay.
But because we're now in the blend file that contains that pose, well, because it's an action, like you can see all the actions here.
Okay.
And you can just select it. But this is a quick way to just assign the action that you select.
It's more like a show because it's already assigned in a way, the pose. It would be like display action or something.
No, you actually assign it to the active object. So because I have the armature selected right now, it's assigned to the active object. And that means that we can even go into the graph editor and see all the curves.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so yeah, okay, all in one frame. Yeah, maybe
all in one frame.
I wonder if calling it assign action pose or something like that would be more or less confusing, because the connection between every pose is an action is still not, but by the user still doesn't know, right? That each action is a pose. It's asset. So maybe a pose action or action pose, something like that. It is.
We'll have to talk about it.
Wow.
So one thing that I want to show is that once you're here and you have the action, you can see that it was keyed on frame 1.
Yeah.
And that's also reflected in the background color, because you can see I've animated the background color, and at some point I've also switched to a different camera. So let's say we want to have this background color instead. What you can do is just move those keys here, and then when you click on this refresh button, it will go automatically to this particular frame and give it a blue background color.
So in the future, when you use this pose, it doesn't matter if it was keyed on frame 1, 10, or 5000. It doesn't matter. It will always work. So the keyframe doesn't matter. The number keyframe.
The number doesn't matter, but it does give you a reference of where you were when you generated that that pose.
Okay.
So you can go back to the right settings and then have the right camera, the right background color, the right overlay image on a plane that you stuck in front of the camera to render stuff on top.
Yeah.
And like it does take the current frame, so I made a little mistake, but maybe at some point we'll let this icon even go to the correct frame.
Yeah. What happens if you remove channels from the action here? Are you messing up the pose, or like...
You're editing the pose, yeah, because the pose is the action.
Okay, so it could be even cleaned up from here, make a duplicate.
You can clean it up. You can key more things if you think if you see that something is missing. You can key it. You can key any custom properties on the armature. You can do pretty much anything that you can do with an action.
Wow, so anything in the action, and this applies also for poses, but yeah, for anything. So if you're driving any kind of setting anywhere in the scene for the whatever world camera, it would work. So you could do it for camera poses even.
Yeah, you could.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And one thing I also want to show you is that now that we've actually edited this this pose, this asset,
yeah,
we can save. Now I can quit this Blender. When you come back, you can see that on the right, it automatically reloaded the asset browser, and now it shows the new icon that we just saved.
Nice,
So
automatically.
in here we said in the context menu, open blend file, it will monitor that extra Blender that's running in the background, and it will, once that closes, it will reload this asset browser.
Okay, I see. I saw open. Can you right click on one? I think the open blend file is twice. I don't know if that is expected.
Oh, that merge issue.
Because it's one object, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just the same operator that got in there twice.
Got in there twice, but it both works. So better.
Oh, yeah.
More options too. If you miss one, you can click on the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's so cool. So as you mentioned that you're working on this now, you are fixing issues that may pop up by people reporting bugs. Do you have from now until Blender 3.0 comes out, or when the when you're allowed to continue working on it, so Beacon 2, Beacon 3, do you expect like big changes or big additions to the post library item as it is now, or is it now just a matter of fixing stuff?
I think it's now a matter of fixing stuff. There's already a lot of feedback from what people would have liked to see. For example, one thing I didn't show yet is how to get new poses in there. That is something that we'll definitely have to discuss. Right now it's like a copy paste, so you can just select some. Well, I can show you. Why bother talking about it if I can just show it entire screen? Oh, because I said what? Yeah. Buttons are hard, computers are hard.
Yeah, if everything was command line. Okay, there.
That would have been so easy. So the idea is that, say you have some pose, say like here, this, and I select now the bones that I'm, not those, the facial bones, because I want to have something in the, I want to have like a new facial pose in there. I can just select the bones, and here in the animation editor, I can say copy pose as asset. And this will just save it somewhere temporarily on disk. Now I can say, of course I have to tell Blender where I want this pose to live, where on disk, because every pose library is different. Every production will have different ways of working. So the easiest way is to just go to an asset that's already in the right place, click open blend file. And then when you're there, you get this button here, paste this new asset, and there you go. There's our new pose. Of course, you'll want to re-render it, so...
you get the right camera and color.
Yeah, exactly. This was rendered with the camera as it was when I clicked on the copy button. But you can see it works.
Yeah.
You got the pose there. And you can click on refresh, and then it will be there. So
cool. So by default goes with transparent background and the active camera That's cool. And you name it, you save, you
You
close.
save, you quit, and then
Here,
new demo.
That
And
was
I double
easy.
click it, and nothing happens because you of course already had that pose. If you go to a new blend file, new frame, there you go.
That's awesome. Wow.
So I think this is a pretty good, easy way to make sure that stuff is all right and that you don't have to do too many actions. Given that you've already set up the file where you want to go, it's easy to go there, even if you don't know exactly where it lives on your disk. You still know I want it to live with these other poses, and you can just open the file and work with it.
That is massive. I really like that. Yeah, again, what I mentioned at the beginning, that another module, the animation module in this case, is contributing to improving the asset browser experience and polishing it, because as we said before, for one person, for Julian, this is a huge project, but maybe tackling it in small parts. I know the Grease Pencil team is also working on their own asset browser improvements and approach for Grease Pencil poses and actions. So
yeah, a while ago I had a video call with Antonio, and we just discussed a bit the details about how to interact with the asset system from like inside of Blender. And I think that what we set out to have, that every asset is an action, that works pretty well also now for new cases.
yeah, you have to go.
I have to open the door. I will be back in a few minutes.
Okay, see you in a few minutes. Okay, I hope my door doesn't ring now. Otherwise, how are you guys liking it today so far? I do have things to show. There's plenty of changes in Blender for this week. I wanted to have a special guest today because it is a very special moment for the asset browser project in general. We have, as you may have heard, the asset browser comes from even before 2.8, like the asset manager project. Worked on by Bastian and part of the core team, but then it was retargeted for 2.8, somewhere in 2.8, and then for 2.9, and it's so cool that now it's finally happening in 3.0, in the Blender 3.0 release. The as I mentioned, as a bit of a spoiler alert, the asset browser might get some Grease Pencil action soon to allow to have assets like part of the strokes and the layers of Grease Pencil as their own assets, so you can do cutout animation more easily. So yeah, the future is actually pretty bright. Something that I like to point out of these of the improvements that came thanks to this project is also the fact that now the UI list, so like the UI list, like the list of materials or the list of shape keys or vertex group and so on, now it's much more flexible thanks to this project. Like for example, now an asset library is set per workspace. That is pretty neat. On the sidebar of the asset browser now, it's Blender's going to show the path of the asset, where it lives inside of the entire repository that you're using. There's a new API, so all the improvements that we just seen now that have on the sidebar that you can click, drag, all of that, it's now also available for other add-ons. So add-ons, the add-on making community is also gonna get a lot of goodies from this. This asset list that we see on the sidebar right now is limited to poses, but in the future it can be materials. It's like a tiny asset browser. What you see on the sidebar, that list that Sybren was showing, that is a mini asset browser, what you see there. So for example, there is an asset view UI template, like a new way to preview the template. That's what it was being shown. But on top of that, the UI list now, for example, also allows you to see the bigger preview tiles. You can also mouse over a UI list and Control F to search, so you can access that much more easily. So this project not only improved the post library, but also UI lists in general. And I think our guest is back.
I am.
Okay, good to see you back. I was talking about how this project not only improves on things for the post library, but also the asset browser in general, but also UI list, for example, all the little improvements, tooltips, drag and drop, bigger tiles, and the add-ons, external add-ons, community add-ons, commercial, paid, and anything will be better now and more better integrated with Blender.
Yeah, well, I think like what Ton was also saying over the past period, like he wants to have more collaboration between people. So also at Blender Institute itself, more teamwork, more groups of 2-3 people working at the same thing, instead of everybody working on their own island. And I think this is a really good example of how well it can work, because I really enjoyed working with Julian. I still enjoy working with Julian. It's not past tense. And I think it also really can improve Blender as a product, because you have multiple people with each of their own ideas about how things should work and discussing about it, and you can just cherry pick the best ideas and go with it.
Yeah, and having like weekly meetings or like following the progress is also very helpful. We tested this in the past with geometry nodes last year, and now the asset browser, also some improvements in the outliner and overrides, I remember. So what do you think, besides bug fixing? Do you have other bigger projects in the horizon for you, or for the animation module?
We have some ideas on how to improve the animation system. I won't go into much detail yet, because I don't want to suggest that we may do something when this is all completely insecure, uncertain. But I do feel an itch to start using the node system a bit more. Let's say it that way.
Oh, just dropping the bomb. Okay, cool. So
I don't know how yet. I don't know what's going to happen exactly, but I would really enjoy like expanding on that.
Yeah, putting the in everything notes. Cool, awesome. Well, that is super good to hear. I don't want to take more of your time. I don't know if you have to arrange whatever arrived on the door.
No, like the stuff that needs to go into the fridge is in the fridge. So
okay, cool.
I have all the time now.
You know, the groceries, yeah, that lockdown life. Okay, no, I mean, I think I do think we covered most of it. I have some things, more things to show, to mention that I've been added this week to Blender. I don't know how much more time I'm gonna have for that, so maybe I can even postpone it for another episode. Do you have anything else that you want to show, or is people here in the chat having rigging nodes, texture nodes, sequencer nodes, Lambo nodes?
Yeah, everything nodes,
everything,
of course.
Okay.
Grease pencil nodes. Before you leave, like this video. Yeah, I will. A good idea. I have to like this video. There you go. Another like.
Thank you for the likes. Animation and rigging nodes.
Yeah.
How would you even start animation nodes? What is animation? Well, not the add-on animation nodes, but like.
There's a few ideas, and one thing that really would benefit from a node system is the constraint system, because it's basically constraint is like a modifier. It has a certain input, it has a certain output, and it has just to manipulate things in between. And that is basically a node system. And then right now there's quite a few options that have to be duplicated between all the constraints, which could just be replaced by one single node in a node tree, and then you can plonk that on different inputs of your constraint nodes.
So the geometry nodes approach to constraints.
Yeah. I see one question from Limerest. Can we mark whole action as an asset to store whole animations instead of only poses? Yes, you can. Wow. You can already, but it may not work in the way you want it to work quite yet. So yes, the idea of having snippets of animation in the pose library is something that is achievable with having every pose in its own action. But there's more that we need to do in order to make this possible. It's definitely on our radar. And yes, technically you can just take any action and just mark it as asset. It will still interpret the data as if it is a pose, though. I will just read through. Also, is grease pencil material node something that will happen? I have no idea about the grease pencil nodes. Sorry about that. Just something about which distribution I'm using. Sorry. I am on Kubuntu, so it's Ubuntu with the KDE desktop environment.
Oh, it's not
I've
Neon.
Been using.
It's not Neon. It's Kubuntu.
It's Kubuntu. Yeah, I've been using KDE on and off for I don't know how long, like 20 odd years. I don't know how old it is, but I started using Linux back in '97, and I've been using KDE since a long time.
Animation nodes like a state machine. Well, that is like another word for game engine, I would say.
Animation nodes like a state machine. Well, actually, no. It's actually the opposite. Like a node system would be every node should not have any state. It should just get its input, do some computations on the input, send it as output, and not have any internal state. So actually a node system, as we have it in Blender, is the opposite of a state machine.
Okay. Multi-state machine.
Yeah. What are the future films by Blender? Well, Sprite Fright that's going on right now.
Sprite Fright. Go to cloud.blender.org. You're gonna find the in production of status and weekly updates of, like, I think it's people are not fully aware yet that on the cloud you can follow the production every week. I think we need to make it a bit more obvious, but if you go to cloud.blender.org and see the Sprite Fright, there's a section called production logs where you can see every week the videos, like how the entire meeting by the project, by the team members, the animation, the assets, the everything every week. We don't do justice to the amount of content the guys are putting out, so yeah, go check it out.
There's another question about the pose library from Andre Kling. If you do changes to the main pose, does it apply to where it is being used? No. Because the only thing that applying a pose does is change the current pose of the armature. And so if you have auto keying off, you still have to manually go in and set the keyframes. So it's really only moving bones around like you could also manually do. And there is no memory whatsoever that particular pose came from that particular asset.
In other words, it's not a reference, it's not linked, it's append. Something like that.
Well, yeah, in the asset browser terminology, we actually use it and name it apply.
Apply, okay, yeah.
So for the asset browser, you have link and append, which you can do with data blocks in general.
Yeah.
But for the pose library, you want to load that action into memory and then apply the pose from that action on the character, and then just discard that data block again.
Yeah.
How's your cat, Sybren? Well,
is your cat famous on the internet?
I guess so. This is Mishak.
Oh wow, it's so hard to see. Yeah, if you're making an animation film, don't have black animals because it's really hard to light them properly. You can see in Spring Open Movie, the dog ended up being gray sometimes because it was hard to make it pop out without like super strong rim lights. So giving some hints of light.
Yep. But I think it was Another World game, really old game, that had these completely black creatures. So you only saw the black outline and these two eyes. That was super scary. So you can totally make it work.
Indeed, you can.
Will Blender become better than other 3D program? No, it already is.
Well, yeah, name the no, it's impossible. Every 3D program has its place on the pipelines. That's why I think it's so important to have open standards. And Blender is getting there. I heard soon we might get the USD importer sometime soon.
I hope so. It's I'm actually reviewing the patch, and it's really down to the final nitty-gritty small things. So I'm mostly arguing about terminology in the user interface right now to make things extra clear for people, and it's at that level. So I expect it to be in master really soon.
Okay, wow. So maybe for next week or the other, we might have USD, Universal Scene Description, in Blender for import. We already have export thanks to this boy. That's so cool. That is awesome. You also work on the rewriting the system. So both Alembic and USD have this similar system underneath, right? That can also be used in the future.
Well, they're actually using it already. The exporter system I pretty much rewrote for the USD exporter, and the Alembic exporter now is also being transformed to use that new system. So things like handling of instances, duplies, all of the stuff with, but the parent doesn't exist in the export because it's part of a collection we're not exporting, but the grandparent is part of that collection, so it does need to go into the export, and you have to recompute all the matrices, and that is now all unified. So if there's a bug, it's in both. If it's fixed, it's also fixed in both. So that's nice.
That's nice. Do you think are there other other extensions or other file formats that could benefit from this?
I think so. Yeah. The system is really agnostic when it comes to the file format itself. So I think any exporter, at least when it's implemented in C++, can benefit from this, as long as it's an exporter for part of the scene.
Okay.
So OBJ, for example, wouldn't really benefit from this because you only write one mesh to an OBJ file.
Yeah.
But when it becomes more like exporting a whole hierarchy of objects, then this thing will help.
That's good to hear. And I think once we have USD, Alembic, well, I think one of the last big pieces missing will be Material X, I think, for the shading part. And we should be industry, what is it?
Yeah,
FBX.
I'm looking at the chat right now. So can sculpting brushes be saved as assets for the asset library? At the moment, no, but that is like totally on the radar. This is one of the big milestones for the asset browser system. Where can I learn about Blender Conference? Well, conference.blender.org.
Yeah, well, you're gonna learn that there's no conference for this year. Unfortunately, it has been moved for next year, but the Blender Institute and Blender Foundation have big plans for around that time of the year. You may have heard about Blender 3.0, and that should happen before the end of the year, hopefully November-ish, November-ish, and workshops that will happen before that, around September, October, November. Also, that's the plan. Can geometry nodes be saved to the asset library, and is there going to be an online community section?
An online community section, maybe. Like one of the pillars of the asset browser system is that it should support online repositories. So the Blender Cloud add-on, which gives you access to textures, HDRIs, etc. on Blender Cloud, we will transform the add-on to be working with the asset browser instead of drawing this custom UI. Same for BlenderKit. Dua is actually part of the asset browser team. He was also part of the workshop that we held. So the support for online services, definitely.
It is, yeah. So cool that an external add-on, someone that is not in Blender Institute, also gets involved in that. I think it's
really important.
It is the future.
To have, yeah, but also to have people like him involved in the project from the get-go.
Yeah. Hans mentioning reworking the way categories work. Yeah, I think there are plans for that too, right? The catalog system.
Yes. Yeah, right now it is just some categories that you can click with big buttons, and that's quite clumsy. So yeah, definitely. There's another blog post on code.blender.org that explains the outcome of the code of the asset browser workshop, and there we explain what this will look like.
Yes, is from June 28th. Asset browser workshop outcomes. So I'm gonna paste the link in the chat so people can have a look. But yeah, so much going on in Blender 3 now that I even got more expanded in like the date got extended. It's just, what about the video sequence editor? I don't know. Can strips be assets? No, they're not data blocks.
No, exactly. They're the entire VSE is not even a data block, so the scene would be an asset, and you can totally do that. You can mark a scene as asset, but then for now, the only thing you can do with it is link it or append it into your current blend file. So I don't really see a use for that in a VSE workflow.
Yeah, it makes sense. Something that you would reuse, I guess, logos or things like that. But a video editor, more than an asset browser, it's like a media bin. So it's somewhere you manage your media. You can clip you can shorten the clips that you get, and you can make little clips from that, like organizing, renaming things. So it's not more of a permanent place for your media, but more of a living creature. But yeah, I wonder how sorry.
Pipeliner asks, audios as asset or in the asset browser makes sense or not? Yeah, totally. For now, assets are data blocks, but if you look at the asset browser workshop outcomes blog post, we've also thought about how to make non-Blender files assets. So
non-Blender file
images,
assets.
Video files, audio files, all of that should also become an asset.
Yeah.
Or assetizable.
Assetizable.
Markable as asset. Yeah.
Assetify. But I know the Chris Pencil team already kind of went into this issue because they wanted to have strokes inside of a Chris Pencil object as assets. So they had this, there's a menu where they create assets, and so far in Blender it was only possible to mark something as asset. But they were like, okay, what should we do? Because this is an actual creation of an asset. We are not marking a data block as an asset. We're taking some strokes or a layer inside of the Chris Pencil object as asset.
Yep. But it's the same for the pose library. So they can do the same that is done there. Because also when you add a pose to the pose library, you don't mark asset your current animation. You select some bones, and then you either click on create pose asset if you're already in your asset blend file.
Yeah.
Or you click on copy pose as asset, and then you can go to your asset blend file and paste it there. Both situations will create a new action data block for you and copy all the right information in there, and then mark it as asset for you.
Yeah.
So that approach is also very usable by the grease pencil guys.
Absolutely. I remember also discussing something similar, I guess, to having entire animations as a pose. So for example, say you made a blink animation and you want to have that as a pose. So you add the pose blinking, but then, okay, you have to think, is this an absolute time or relative time? Is it based on the current frame or not?
Yeah. We have to think about how to do that, because maybe you want to have the moment where the eye closes as what you want to see when you click on apply pose. And then it influences a little bit of animation before the current frame, a little bit of animation after the current frame. Or maybe you want to have the start of the blink at the time where you click apply pose. This is all kind of stuff that we have to discuss with animators to see what best fits their workflow.
Yeah, I think having working prototypes is going to be the best, because just talking about it can be tricky, and once you use it, probably I know models are a bit of evil, but I think for this case, some kind of model, like when you are applying the pose and then you can switch between, or you can with some modifier, you can shift the start point, for example. That could work. But yeah.
Alexander Gaviglov is already working on a patch with a different purpose. Actually, it's more to support better workflows for looping animations, like walk cycles for game engines and stuff, where you can tell an action what its start and end frame are, so that Blender can do some sanity checks on all the F curves in that action. Do they start at the right point? Do they end at the right point? That kind of stuff. And this could also help in defining actions in the pose library. But as I said, it's all still to be designed.
Wow. So Animation 2020 is happening in a way, in one way or another.
Yeah. It's all part of doing the nice stuff with the animations.
Yeah. Wow. So for the near future, you see yourself working on the animation module, and what about the far future? Do you still see in the animation module? Do you dream of one day working on, I don't know, video editing or rendering, or is there a physics? Is there a section of I know you work on crowds for your thesis, right? So
yeah,
is that something that
designing a crowd system for Blender would be amazing. Also, but animation, I really do love animation, and my master thesis was on animation data manipulation technique. But also my whole PhD was about animation. So yeah, know that I'm now here in an animation module is not by accident.
That's cool. That is.
But yeah, there's so much stuff that is fun to do. We also have plans for Flamenco to make that, like, redesign some of the core principles so that the Flamenco server component, which now runs on Blender Cloud, is no longer necessary. And this is one of the big hurdles for a lot of people who want to run their own farm but not be dependent on something online. One of the big hurdles for using Flamenco, and just cutting out that one component, or at least make it optional for running your own render farm. That would also be a nice, fun project of a few months.
Absolutely, and that is something Blender doesn't have at the moment, like a built-in, but kind of built-in network renderer inside. I think coupling both, because Flamenco is open source, and now without the need of having to install the entire server, that would be...
It will be a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I know it would be a huge asset for Blender to have. Not the asset browser, but a feature, a big feature.
Yeah.
Network rendering on inside Blender.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so cool. Will Blender get AI-based tools? Well, actually, there has been some research already on rigging-based.
Blender already has AI-based tools. We have the AI denoiser.
Yes.
So there is already AI in Blender. But also, yes, the RigNet add-on, Pablo is working on that. Yep, there you go. Which is great stuff.
Yeah, that was a grant by the Blender Development Fund as well. So people that are part of the Blender Development Fund, it's cool that Blender is also investing on research and not only bug fixing and everything, but yeah, this is the first write-up based on the work that is done, that Pablo has done on AI-based rigging, and you can see, yeah, very promising results. There is a video here of AI rigs and the explanation, the dependency diet, because the Blender Foundation backed the project, so you have to, so there are things you can do for making it a bit less dependency hungry, so Blender doesn't become huge. But also it is mainly like is like research, right? Because you need the, like Blender, I don't think it would, well, first, it's so far it's only CUDA as a requirement at the moment, but in the future I think it mentions that CUDA will get CPU, like this will get CPU support, the library will get it, so then it's no longer needed to have a CUDA card.
Yeah, also he's been working a lot on just replacing certain external libraries with Blender itself, because the original RigNet used a lot of different libraries for mesh handling, for example, which is now done with, of course, Blender's mesh handling. So I think that's really good to make it closer to Blender, and it will make it a lot easier to start using it.
Absolutely. I missed the bit where he mentions that you don't need to reinvent the wheel to handle 3D when you have Blender as a in the back. But yeah, why Blender wouldn't ship with something like this? Well, first of all, Blender right now is 200 megabytes, which is quite, I mean, it's big in one side but not so big in another. But the training models, those can get pretty beefy. The PyTorch library is 2 gigs. So yeah, you may want to have that as an external, something that you want to install yourself.
Yeah. Blender is RAM hungry. Will it improve? It's improving all the time. It is
improving, like the well, not only RAM but also processes. Now I think Blender 3 and 2.93, it's night and day. It's not only like, I think it is, if the 2.7 to 2.8 rebrand, like redesign, so the equivalent to the redesign, but on performance we'll see in 2.9 to 3.0.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Hey, Fire in the Sky is saying I'm using 24 gigs of RAM on my PC. Yeah, my home PC has 32, my work has 40. I think Andy's has either 64 or 128 gigs. I don't remember what his machine does, but it's massive.
But most developers don't have that much RAM though. So like when developers are making Blender, they don't rely on these massive computers. The requirements haven't changed for Blender 3, so yeah, don't worry about that. I think we're close to we are close to 1 hour now, so unless we have like bigger questions, I think it's a good moment to wrap it up. It's been super nice to have you in here.
Yeah,
I'm gonna save the goodies from Blender for next week. I have to prepare for the live stream, for the Spanish live stream. There, nice. Okay, let's go full screen kitty. Awesome. Okay, cool. Once again, thank you. Feel free to drop by. People love it when there is more than just one face talking for an hour. So please, anytime you have something new to share, or if feel free to drop by.
I hope to be back next week with USD's importer is done. No promises though.
Hopefully,
it's not up to me.
I need some clickbait titles for the stream, so I'm gonna cross my fingers to have.
If it happens, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah. Now, what I like about the clickbait titles is that they're not really clickbait because we deliver. Here it's like post library. Well, it's actually there. You can go and test it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is all then. Thank you, Sybren. I'm gonna close here and say goodbye to the community. But yeah, good to have you over. Have fun. Enjoy the sun. It's getting quite warm here. So see ya.
See ya.
Bye. Okay, community, I have not much time left for talking about the improvements that Blender saw this week, but I think it's nice, right, to have a every now and then a bit of a change from having just the news and also mix it with some news by the people that are working on the projects. And having a way to answer also questions in this case was for the animation module, but we could have other developers for other parts of the of Blender, like geometry nodes or rendering in the future. We had Cycles X at some point, so why not? Gonna cut it here for once, try to keep it under 1 hour. I hope you had fun. I did have fun. I have a long list of features that I wanted to show you that happened this week, but I'm gonna save that for next week. Next week, I hope the developers manage to add too much more new stuff, except the USD importer, which is quite big news. If you're just working with Blender and blend files, it's not so big, but if you're working in a production environment, being able to import USD files that come from other softwares, it's extremely important. We want to have Blender interplay better with other applications, and I think that is the future. It's not about who software is the best, but what software plays the best with other softwares. It's a good team player. So without further ado, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. See you again next week, same place, same time, for another episode of Blender Today. No warning, though.